It says
What does it say?
I can't even get like our page to come up when I try to search it on YouTube and Google it, even though I'm like signed into it. It's but we're live on YouTube. Yeah, we are. We are live on YouTube right now. Okay, bet. Let me go copy that link.
Okay. Okay. Yeah. I'm looking at it.
Hyro, feel free to use mine if you want to. My stick. No. The ECD head. All right. Hardy, we are rolling. Let's.
That's
Shall we?
right.
Yeah. Technically, we've been live for 7 minutes and 45
Seven
seconds,
and a
but
half
welcome
minutes. Yes.
into another episode
Yes.
of Behind the Glass Sports. Hardy
Yeah.
just sat up. That means it's go time.
Yeah. That means it is go time. Glad to be back. Glad to be on YouTube, switching over from StreamYard and live streaming to Twitter or X as it is known now. Aiden, college football is back. It might not be a lot of college football this upcoming weekend, but it
But
will be
it's
some.
at all.
It will give us a chance to evaluate. I mean, one of the better teams, or one of the perceived better teams in college football coming into the season, will be playing this Saturday in Florida State. Get to see how a couple of former Alabama guys do with that team. Very excited to see how Roydell Williams translates to being the guy in a running back room. I think he's going to get a lot of touches, especially with how inconsistent we've seen DJ play. But other than that, I mean, Aiden, we got to get into some of these like preseason expectations because football is packed. It's been 6 months, maybe even longer than that, but we finally have a
The
chance to
man who
talk
does
about
not
college
allow
football.
himself the man who does not allow himself to get excited even though he knows he will be let down and be disappointed does not experience anywhere near as much joy in his life as the man who just allows himself to get excited and let down over and over and over again. And so that is how I will
Yes.
be about these week 0 games.
Yes, me as well. There's, on paper, there's not a lot to be excited about from a matchup perspective. The Florida State Georgia Tech game is bright and early because they're going to be playing that game over in Ireland. So, 11
Oh, I
o'clock kickoff on
forgot about
Fox.
that.
Yeah, 11 o'clock
Kind of
kickoff
amazed
on
that they still
Fox.
got it under the wire at noon for us East Coasters.
Yeah, I mean, you'll have that game. It'll give everybody. I think it'll satisfy everybody just enough to hold us off until week one actually starts. We've been starving for a little college football action um, since January. So
Yeah.
that was 7 months ago, 7.5 months ago, and it's a completely different landscape in college football now. We've had all the different conference realignment. We've gone over all of that. All the transfer portal is business is booming. So it's going to be a super interesting season. And do you have anything that you're really excited for? Just number one thing on the top of your list coming into this year?
Well, coming into this year, right off the bat, provided that the plane, they find a plane to get them there, Delaware State taking on the Hawaii Rainbow Warriors. Hardy, this is a tradition you and I have formed over the last handful of seasons, wherein we allow ourselves to buy fully in to the Rainbow Warriors hype train. All credit to Hardy on this. This is his wagon that I have decided to hitch myself to the back of. And every year it's a crushing disappointment, but nonetheless, here I am stoked to high hell, um, hoping that the Delaware State team actually makes it. If you don't know, Delaware State was trying to get there super early. They were trying to leave Tuesday evening, I'm pretty sure it was. And they were
Yes.
trying to, get to Hawaii, get acclimated to the time change, get acclimated to the weather and the humidity and everything. Planes broke.
Yep.
They don't got another flight. They're
Yep.
kind of hoping for the best.
Yeah, and there's not very many flights that go out to Hawaii on a weekly basis. There might be one morning, one evening flight every day. It's kind of like with, if you're going to Europe or something like that, there's, one morning flight, one afternoon flight. That's the only options you're going to get. Um, and from what it sounds like, I mean, it's Delaware State is an FCS HBCU. So, I mean, they don't have their own, private jet to fly players out to
No.
Hawaii. They were, flying commercial. So, I mean, it's going to be rather difficult for them to find essentially a full plane to take their guys out to Hawaii, because when it comes to not just players, but guys on staff, different coaching staff, the equipment team, everything involved,
Every
the
girl that's an
social
athletic training intern.
Yeah, the athletic trainers, the social media teams, the people that are responsible for filming the games, the
And,
people
and
that
and if you think that
might
like
work.
their three most like highly targeted recruits for Delaware State weren't going to come on the team trip to Hawaii, I mean, like, you're crazy. That was
Yeah,
absolutely going to be a recruiting thing.
yeah, it was going to be a chance to build up that program for sure. But we're kind of on the fence about seeing where this game goes. You know, I mean, it was 11. I mean, nearly 11 p.m. Central kickoff.
Yeah.
Uh, so a lot of people were probably not going to be seeing that game. I'm not even sure if it is broadcasting on any national television networks. Uh, just looking at ESPN, they do not have it
Not.
available. Um, so, so if you can find if Delaware State does manage to find their way out to Hawaii and they, are streaming it on some different third party platform, and you're able to find that game, if you could send it to me, that would be fantastic, because I go into work at midnight Saturday night, so I would be able to watch the entirety of that football game,
Hey,
make my Saturday night a little bit better.
Stream East will save everyone.
Yeah, Stream East has a very, very good shot of saving me. I will be looking into that. Not holding out a lot of hope though about that game in particular. They mostly have some of the smaller games, but
I can get
let's get into
like the two semifinals and the championship game for college lacrosse. That's it. They're not going to have this game.
yeah, pretty much.
So,
So
but
looking at this college football season, um, obviously a lot of hype coming into it. It should be, on paper, one of the most competitive football seasons we've seen in a really long time. More teams joining the Big Ten, ACC, SEC, Big 12. Conference realignments kind of shake things up. Alabama has a really tough schedule. Georgia is finally playing a very tough schedule, having to go on the road to a couple of very high quality schools. Texas, Oklahoma, first years in the SEC, how they're going to translate from the Big 12 are all major topics of discussion. But just going through, one of the things that everybody has their 2 cents on is which one of these players is going to walk away with the Heisman Trophy this season. It's preseason, so it gives us a perfect time to just float one or two names out there that could be a dark horse candidate for the award. You look at, obviously right now, I think, the players that have, or the teams that have players from big time schools. Dylan Gabriel from Oregon is really high on a bunch of people's lists because he's going to put up numbers in that offense. Will Howard with Ohio State, it's going to get a lot of good looks. Jalen Milroe, Alabama, he'll get some good looks. Aiden, what is one player that you think has a just really outside shot of taking home the Heisman Trophy this season?
Outside shot. Look, I the odds makers have kind of taken my answer already because my answer here, honest to God, is Will Howard. I am not anywhere near as high on him coming into this season that I think most people nationally that work in this space are. However, as we discussed, I think on the last show before our summer hiatus, you look at Ohio State's schedule and you kind of look at all of the drooling and oohing and eyeing that comes over, struggle wins for that team. And I think Will Howard really does have an opportunity to, kind of make this his race to lose very in that first half of the season with the schedule they have lined up in front of them. If I had to choose somebody that is going to dark horse, make noise, make a name for themselves, and potentially take some people by a lot of surprise, I'm going to go with Van Dyke up in Wisconsin. Transferring in
Yeah,
from Miami. Had nowhere near the season that people expected him to last year. There was all the nonsense early before the season started about, is he going to transfer to Alabama? And he's using it as leverage to get NIL money, and whatever actually happened there happened. And after all that, it was a disappointing season. I think something that people forget when they look at the case of Tyler Van Dyke is that Mario Cristobal coming into this season is squarely on the hot seat. I forget what odds book or what sports book posted their odds, but for the first midseason firing of a head coach, Mario Cristobal had the second best odds at 6-1, which is just insane to think that 6-1 people are spending their money saying, yeah, that guy's going to get shit canned before the season's even over. And so he goes up to Wisconsin, and Wisconsin evaluates him through spring and fall, and they name him the starting quarterback. Wisconsin's playing in the Big Ten too. Let's not act like just
yeah.
because it's Wisconsin doesn't mean like they're going to play real teams, or he's not going to get the recognition there. He's going to play Ohio State. He's going to play Michigan. He's going to play Penn State, or some combination of them and the other powerhouse schools in that conference. Oregon, USC coming in. He's somebody that if he finds half of what he was supposed to be last season, could really shock the world and force himself into this Heisman race and maybe even get a New York invite.
Yeah, it's definitely possible. They start off the season with a huge matchup against Alabama, and so if he's able to perform really well in that game, even if they don't necessarily win that game, if he's able to go out there and show teams that he is a competent quarterback, puts up really good numbers in that game, then I think he has a fair shot of putting himself on the map, even in a losing effort. And once you get into the Big Ten, there's some, of course, some questions year over year about who is actually good in that conference. But I'm not sure if they have the matchups against both Ohio State and Michigan. I would be surprised if they didn't play at least one of them. But a guy that, for me, coming into the season that I think has a really good shot of being a dark horse candidate is Brady Cook at Mizzou. They have and it's kind of the similar path as Van Dyke because they're going to be playing, but they're going to be playing a much tougher schedule. He's going to have one of the top receivers in the country in Luther Burden III. And so I think having that combination, being able to put up a lot of statistical value, and Mizzou is expected to be a really good team this year, coming off a lot of really high expectations after winning uh, against Ohio State last year in the Sugar Bowl, I believe, or was it the Cotton Bowl?
And by the way, taking the University of Georgia down to the wire.
Yeah, I mean, there's a lot of really, really high expectations this season. I don't know if they will necessarily be good enough to get into the playoff. If they are, Brady Cook has a very real shot to get an invite to New York City. I mean, Cody Schrader is no longer there. They'll still rely heavily on that run game, but when you have a guy like Luther Burden who's projected to probably be in, one of the first wide receivers off the board in next year's NFL draft, teams really do give a good long look at the guy throwing him the football. And in a quarterback class where there is a lot of questions, a lot of movement, he is in a stable place because he's not new to the system. I think he's going to have a real shot to put up some pretty big numbers.
By the way, without take the departure of your star running back out of that, but scenarios like where we've seen guys like Greg McElroy, Blake Sims, really making a name for themselves. Neither of them won a Heisman Trophy. They made a lot of noise and made a bit of a case for it. And by the way, they've got rings on their fingers. So,
Yeah.
I was laughed off the program, however many moons ago, for suggesting that, I feel better about Alabama beating Georgia than Missouri this season. But that is still the case. I have more apprehension about that Missouri game than I do the Georgia game early in the season.
Again, I still don't disagree. I still don't agree with you on that one.
I know you don't. That's fine.
But it's perfectly fine. They're expected to be good.
Yeah.
They had their first really good year under Eli Drinkowitz. He's kind of that season definitely saved him from being on hot seat conversations this season. If he's able to follow up that success and get Mizzou back to the level that they were really in kind of the late 2000s, when they were right there in the top 5, making the SEC championship in their first year in the SEC. If he can get Mizzou back to that level of relevance, then he can be at that program for a really long time.
Weren't they as high as number 1 or number 2 in the AP poll in like 2014 or something like that?
I don't know if it was. Well, Mississippi State was the first team to be ranked number 1 in the very first college football playoff rankings ever under Dak, and then they went to Bryant Denny and got
undone. They were deconstructed, to put it politely.
Yeah, it was a very rough turn of events for them. But to that point, you mentioned earlier, Mario Cristobal has the second highest odds of being fired mid-season. The number 1 guy is Billy Napier, I imagine.
Yes, it is. And another note I want to touch on here, because I like to touch on this guy and move on. Only about, I think it was 8 slots down that list, like number 8 or number 9, Ryan Day.
Yeah.
So moving on, yes, Billy Napier, number 1, most likely to be fired mid-season.
Yeah, Florida comes into this college football season with I imagine, it is the toughest schedule in college football. They have to play Georgia, LSU. They play Oklahoma. They play Mizzou. Let me pull up that schedule real quick. They open up the season with Miami. They play Texas A&M. They go to Mississippi State. They play the Gus Bus and UCF. They play at Tennessee. Play against Ole Miss, at Florida State. Aiden, I know we've kind of touched on this, but we're on a new streaming platform, so we can always go over it again. What week does Billy Napier get fired? Because he's not making it through this schedule.
Well,
as much as it.
If you're asking me for a week number, I gotta look at the the order of games. All right, Miami, Samford. All right, so you went through them in order. You know what? Do we have much confidence in Stoops and company this year?
Not as much as some years past, but that could beg, could definitely, if we don't have a lot of confidence there, they could definitely, that could be the.
So my line of thinking is that if there's decidedly not a whole lot of good in Lexington, and they go into the swamp and beat the Gators at Florida's homecoming game, that Monday is the day.
Yeah.
Provided that Florida hasn't stolen a win somewhere they have no business stealing a win before that.
Yeah, look, I don't have Billy Napier lasting that long. He has
Wow.
the highest odds for a reason. I don't think he makes it to the back half of the schedule. I really do, in my heart of hearts, believe that they start off 2-3, and when they lose to UCF in the Gus Bus, he gets canned. Uh, I don't think they're going to beat Miami as much as Mario Cristobal is also on the hot seat. I think that he's just got a better team than Billy Napier. I trust Cam Ward way more than I trust Graham Mertz to make big time plays in a big time game at 2:30 in Gainesville, which is sadistic. That they're going to be playing a game at that time in August. But they'll beat Samford. They host A&M. I mean, they do have the benefit of hosting a lot of these teams early. So they're hosting Miami, hosting A&M. They travel to Mississippi State. Not super high expectations for them this season. And then they host UCF. So you look at those matchups. They get the benefit of playing those games at home, which only makes it worse if he loses those games.
So your money,
If
it
if
sounds like, would be on maybe after the UCF game?
Yeah, I think after the UCF game,
Because
I mean,
UCF's going to win that football game.
very real shot that the University of Central Florida, UCF, the Golden Knights, led by Arkansas transfer KJ Jefferson, march into Ben Hill Griffin Stadium and get the job done. If
I think they
that
will.
happens,
I don't think it's a very real chance. I'm expecting that to happen.
and if and when they do that, Billy Napier will not be allowed into the locker room after the game.
Well, here's the kiss of irony in the scenario you've laid out here that I personally greatly appreciate. The record for the fastest an FBS head coach has ever been fired, all right, was that crown was bestowed upon the University of Central Florida in 2021 when they fired, what was his name? Clay Helton. Clay Helton
Yeah,
after week 2. I mean, they lost to Samford, man. You lost to Samford, the most holier than thou group of who's a what's it's that
yeah. Well,
Birmingham knows of.
and Florida gets the chance to play the Bulldogs this season.
Yeah, I mean, shit.
Well, like God forbid if Florida loses to Samford, then Billy Napier will be fired after that game. There's no coming back from that.
I mean, they
But
honestly, Hardy, pick the sport. Which one do they have a better chance to win that game in? Basketball or football?
Samford has a better chance to
I
win in
don't.
a basketball game than they do a football game. What you think they? I mean, Samford has. I mean, Buckyball is cruising. I think if they played
Buckyball
in the
is cruising.
basketball, if they played in the basketball game, I think Samford would have a much better shot to win the game. Florida.
It depends on Florida team shows up. The last 3 seasons, we've seen 2 Florida teams.
I know, but the Florida. I mean, I think they have. There's just quite simply there's enough talent on that team for them to beat a team like Samford. Do they have enough talent to just overcome a Miami or Texas A&M? I don't think so. Do they have enough
Yeah.
experience to beat a Gus Malzahn coach team and a guy who's played 4 seasons in the SEC and KJ Jefferson, regardless of
No.
how you feel about his performance in the SEC? No.
I mean, hell, if Jai Hall actually sees the field, then boom.
Well, I mean, Ajayi Hall got arrested coming back from California with like 4 pounds of
Yeah.
weed in his luggage.
Okay, but it's Florida and it's just weed. He'll be fine.
I mean, maybe it'll be interesting to see that. But
The state of Maryland allows recreational customers to purchase up to 1 pound per day. That sounds like an amount that if I were on vacation for multiple days in the great state of California, that sounds like an appropriate amount for personal use according to the state of Maryland.
I guess, man, that is a pretty big stretch. Uh, I wouldn't necessarily follow that line of logic, but if you're willing to put that out there, someone will look at it and say, "Yep, you know what? That's perfectly sound.
And that lawyer can be found on the dollar menu.
Yeah, but let's go ahead and kind of make our picks for who's going to win some of these power conferences, who's going to come out on top and get that first round bye in the upcoming 12-team college football playoff. Because, uh, you know, if you weren't aware, anyone that is watching this stream, if you win your conference championship, you will get the first round bye in the college football playoff, regardless of what your record is, anything like that. As far as I've seen, you could be an 8-4 team, go and play in the ACC championship, and if you win it, you make your way in the college football playoff, and whoever the 11-1 team that did not win the championship game would just get probably get to host a first round game. But
which, I mean, honestly, okay, yes, as a team, you want the first round bye. As a fan, would you rather lose the conference championship game?
I mean, if I have a really, really good team and I lose a conference champion, I mean, of course, if the conference championship is the only way that I get in the playoff, go out win the game. Completely different story. But if I'm just for instance, a Florida State team that is 11-1, 10-2, something like that, and I lose a conference championship game and I get to host a first round game in Doak Campbell Stadium, I believe.
I'll take that deal.
Yeah, with all the fans chopping against whatever, poor, fifth place SEC team or third place Big Ten team that happens to walk in there.
Why would you wish this on the Mississippi State Bulldogs? Why would you wish this on Eli Drinkowitz? Why would you wish this on our Lord and Savior Lane Kiffin?
Hey, it just makes college football more fun. I'm excited to see. Really, I mean, that's one of the things I'm most excited to see is playoff home games in the first round. It's going to be a lot of fun. But let's go through just through the power conferences, and then we can both kind of touch on which group of 5 team we think will get that automatic bid. But starting with the Atlantic Coast Conference, adding a couple of teams from the Pacific Coast, and SMU. I mean, I don't think Stanford or Cal is going to be very competitive. Neither one of them have been, high quality football programs in a while.
But the ACC hasn't been a high quality conference in a long time, and let's be honest, it probably wasn't this way 10 years ago. But the last 4 or 5 years, top to bottom, the Pac-12 has been a vastly superior pool of competition. It's entirely possible that being a bottom feeder of the Pac-12 gets you middling status in the ACC.
It's very possible, but I don't have a lot of faith in them doing that, especially when they go on. They're going to be constantly going back and forth for all of their games. It's a lot of playing time, a lot of time zone change. Even if it's only a couple hours, definitely can get to you over the course of a season. But coming into this year, and the expectations are pretty high for Florida State, really high for Dabo and Clemson. As you said, Mario Cristobal, second highest on the hot seat odds, essentially. NC State has some really interesting pieces, including our Lord and Savior being the newfound starting quarterback for that program. Aiden, who do you see coming out of this kind of top-heavy Atlantic Coast Conference?
Who's quarterback at NC State?
Grayson McCall, baby.
Oh, I forgot about that. Oh, shit.
The look on your face.
Oh,
that man.
Oh yeah, that dude. Look, I'm taking Florida State right out of the running of this. Sorry, I don't mean to piss in anyone's pot here, but that team has far too rich a tradition of ending this of coming up just short and building up all this hope going into the next year that we'll get right over the hump and completely collapsing. And honestly, I mean, the best clear-cut example of that is probably 2013. They win the last BCS national championship. They get the job done. They ride out into the sunset, and they show up the next season. And granted, yes, your starting quarterback breaks his leg. They know nothing about that. But the whole team was abysmal. They couldn't put together multiple good drives in a row the entire season. And that's not just the fault of the quarterback. I really and truly believe that Florida State is on a collision course with another grand collapse. And so when I look at the conference top to bottom, and who do I think is going to have the most complete team, and who do I think is going to have the team that overachieves and maybe takes some people by surprise, I have a lot of confidence in Dabo. I also have a lot of confidence in North Carolina.
Yeah, Mac Brown, definitely. Will he be able to push forward, get another conference championship, make a playoff? That is a big time question. He
I think
lost
he will.
Reagan. I think it's
But
definitely possible.
it's kind of been a few in a row down there, you know?
Yeah. I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to say Miami's going to win this conference.
Really?
As
Is this
much as Mario
before or after they fire Cristobal?
Well, I think Cristobal makes it clean through the season.
Okay.
Just looking at their schedule, let me tell you, they have the luck of the draw when it comes to the ACC opponents they play. They do play Florida State, but they get them at home. They get them
Yeah.
in Hard Rock Stadium, so you don't have to go to Florida State. Obviously we mentioned they go to Florida, but then the rest of their ACC, they play Florida A&M, Ball State, South Florida. The rest of their ACC schedule is not anything spectacular. Virginia Tech, Cal, Louisville should be pretty competitive. Duke is not going to be the same team that they were last year after losing Riley Leonard. They play
Obviously.
Georgia Tech, Wake Forest, and then Syracuse. I mean, they don't really play a lot of the teams here at the top of the ACC. We don't even know, again, what Florida's going to be coming into this season. Expectations are, wildly inconsistent. If they can win pretty much every game except for that Florida State game, and who knows, I'm sure Mario Cristobal will probably find the way to drop the ball in at least one of those conference games.
I mean, would it be a Mario
But
Cristobal season if he didn't?
yes, but even still, if they can make it through the regular season at 10-2, they will find themselves in another matchup, likely against a Florida State or a Clemson. Clemson's got a really tough schedule though, but against probably Florida State in the ACC championship up there in Charlotte, and I give with the guys they have that came into that program, I give them a real shot to win that football game. They've been bad for 20 years. They tore down the old Orange Bowl stadium, and they've been hot dog water. Never seems to build anything upon itself. I think this year that they finally break through and have a really high quality season, I don't know if it adds more to the long term success of the program, but I think this is a year that they're able to go out there and have a very high quality season, something that Miami fans have been waiting a really long time for.
Let me ask you this before we move on to the next conference. Not in the college football poll, because we know winning one of the four major conferences gets you the bye, gets you the top spot. Cool. Coaches poll,
Yes.
AP poll, Democratic polls. All right. Do you think that the winner of the ACC is a top 10 football team?
The winner of the ACC, they definitely could be.
Obviously, they could be. Obviously.
No. Well, it depends on who wins the ACC. Clemson and Florida State both have pretty tough schedules. Whether you think Notre Dame is worth anything. I mean, they're a preseason top 10 team right now. Florida State plays them as well as Florida and Clemson. Clemson starts off their season against Georgia. If one of those two teams wins the ACC, then yeah, I think 100% I'll view them as a top 10 football team. If a Miami or an NC State does it, or UNC, there might be some questions. I mean, it really depends on what their record is going into the playoff.
That's fair. I just see this. I just see it in my head now, like this idea that whole conference could be so bad and kind of just cannibalize itself in a miring of mediocrity.
Everyone could just be
9
like
and 3, 8 and 4, and you might have to gratuitously make one of those teams ranked 11 or 12 just to make the rankings make sense. But you really could have the ACC champion be the number 11 or 12 team in the country.
Yeah, I think it's very possible in terms of how they do the rankings. But again, they'll get that first round bye. And if you know whoever the fifth seed is that gets to host that first round playoff game, whether it's a one or two loss Big Ten team or first team out in the SEC, whether Texas, Bama, whoever you think is going to be that team, could be Georgia, but they'll get an easier path to at least the semifinals if they really do truly have to play a kind of boo-boo ACC team. People are going to talk about how the system's broken and how another SEC team should have gotten the first round bye, this, that, the other. Just get over it. In that case, you get to play a playoff game at home. I mean, would Alabama fans pass up the opportunity for a first round bye to play a first round playoff game at home in Bryant-Denny Stadium against who knows another SEC opponent that they didn't play on their schedule? They don't play Ole Miss this year.
Yeah,
Lane
they
Kiffin
would.
and company could walk into
I,
Bryant-Denny.
I think
I would
75% of Bama fans make that trade.
Yeah, I would gladly do that. For some very high, getting to see more competitive football is something that I
In
think everybody should be
person.
happy
Yeah.
for. Yeah.
The parties on the Strip after a home college football
Play
playoff win.
playoff game. Well, classes will not be in session at that time. Students will stay longer
Mm-hmm.
during.
No, we talked about this, when we were talking about this on Sunday Spin when they first started floating the idea, just what it would be to the local economies. I mean, Jesus,
Yeah, it would.
Mississippi State goes on another tear in 5 years, and suddenly we're talking about,
The population of Starkville triples.
every national beat writer in the world is going to spend the next decade telling everyone about Bulldog Burger in Starkville, Mississippi.
Yeah, and I mean it's very, it's something that I'm really excited for coming into this season. Excited to see which one of these teams gets that first round bye. Which one of these teams which one of these teams values winning a conference championship? If they've already kind of have the idea that they're going to get a first round playoff game.
Yeah.
Obviously, you want your guys to be rested, gives the best chance to go out there and win the whole thing. But there's something to be said about momentum and continuing to play as well.
Yes.
And so, especially getting a chance to play in front of home crowd in the biggest of big environments is something that everyone can clap their hands for. But let's move on to the Big 12 because it's next on the list in terms
Did we
of
actually pick the
alphabetical order.
SEC?
We have not picked the SEC. We'll get to that one last.
I thought that's what we were doing there.
No, not yet. We'll get there in a bit. But moving on to the Big 12, they add Utah, Arizona, Colorado, Arizona State. They've lost essentially their two biggest moneymakers in the conference.
Yep.
With Texas and Oklahoma leaving to join the SEC, the Big 12 is as wide open as any conference in the country. There's going to be some pretty competitive teams. I don't know right now, unless one of them really shakes out and becomes better than some of the preseason expectations. I think the Big 12 has more of a chance to cannibalize itself because I think more or less everybody's on a similar playing field.
That's
but
fair.
there's some really interesting teams here. Seventh-year quarterback Cameron Rising and the Utah Utes are, I imagine, the favorite coming into this season. But for me, I'm going to go ahead and settle on the Arizona Wildcats, Noda Fifita and company, making the move to the Big 12. First year under a new head coach. So it'll be interesting to see how it translates, but I, really do think he's one of the most talented quarterbacks in that conference. And looking at their schedule, I think it is pretty favorable overall. So, they play the games against Utah and Kansas State early, but back half is super smooth sailing. I think they can pull it off and go get themselves at least a trip to Dallas to win that Big 12 championship game.
I'm gonna get really pointed at and mocked and heckled for this one. I just have this feeling in the back of my mind, and it's also a feeling of hope that I hope I see this. I really have this feeling that Colorado's going to figure out how to play defense, and Shadur Sanders is going to go out there and do his thing. Um,
But is it going to be enough to win that conference?
Yeah, I mean USC's gone, Oregon's gone, Washington's gone, not gone. You know what I'm saying?
Relocated.
Yes, exactly, and so everything's different. You look at who's in the Big 12. There's no Texas or Oklahoma to worry about. See, now I'm on the right conference. There's no Texas or Oklahoma to worry about in the Big 12 anymore. And honestly, everything outside of them, for the most part, has just been who can have a flash in the pan and rise from the typical level of average bad that conference is. You know, Kansas State had their flash in the pan. Texas Tech has had their flash in the pan in the past. Oklahoma
TCU
State
made the playoff a couple of years ago.
Exactly. Although that was Kansas State's flash in the pan. Let's make no mistake.
They did coincide, yes.
Yeah. So, like, I really feel like it's not a massive step forward that Colorado has to take defensively to go out there and win this conference. And I get the sense that it's going to happen, especially because if it doesn't, what do you think it's like in Dion's house?
Look, okay, let me just roll through this Colorado schedule because it's probably one of the toughest, at least on paper, going into this college football season. Week 1 they play that 7 p.m. kickoff against North Dakota State. Super trap game, FCS team coming to Boulder. North Dakota State's not exactly what they were a couple of years ago when they were just outright winning the FCS multiple years in a row.
Right.
But nonetheless, they're still a very highly competitive team. Then they go to Nebraska. I think Nebraska will be better this upcoming season. Dylan Raiola, has got all the talent to be a stud. Then they go to Colorado State. We saw what that game was last year in triple overtime. They play Baylor. They go to the Gus Bus. Then look at this back half. They play Kansas State, Arizona, Cincinnati, at Texas Tech, against Utah, at ranked number 22 Kansas, and healthy Jalen Daniels. And then they finish the season off against Mike Gundy and the QR codes.
I haven't decided how I feel about that. I'll give my opinion next week. But Hardy, you say all that, and here's the thing. They can score at the drop of a hat, all right? And that team, that whole offense has had another offseason of work, mostly because that's what happens in Colorado. You don't get cut, you get fired. So that offense has been together a little while longer. All they have to do is figure out how to stop a nosebleed. All right. And they've got Warren Sapp out there coaching. I don't know that he was this season, this past season, but you've got legitimate coaching talent on the defensive side of the ball. It's going to happen.
Yes.
And none of these teams scare me if I'm Colorado with the talent I have. It's just a matter of figuring out how to make all the pieces work together. And if they can do that, I don't know that there's anybody that they don't beat on the back half of that schedule. Utah will be the most competitive game.
Yeah. Look, they've got, a bunch of that. That schedule's brutal.
It's brutal if we think of them as a 4-8 that gets 50-pieced by USC. But if that's not what they show up and are through the first half of the season, then it's not as brutal.
We will know what Colorado is if they take care of business against North Dakota State.
Yes. If they run up the score on them, beat them by 4 scores.
If it's not close, I will hop on that train with you and get back on the Colorado hype, as many people did early last season as well after they took down TCU and Nebraska early on.
I was a big enjoyer.
Yeah. But, yeah, I've got a lot of faith in those Big 12 teams on the back half of that schedule to be competitive. A couple of them to make runs at the college football playoff. Ollie Gordon is probably one of the best running backs in college football. And, he's playing for Mike Gundy, and he's going to get 50 touches week 1 for getting a DUI. And that's just how Mike Gundy decides to punish his players.
And
Um,
it's going to alternate every like 20 minutes, whether Gundy's thinking of it as a punishment or a reward.
yeah, pretty much. But this is also a big time question for Mike Gundy. His program has like been screwed, been left out of the college football playoff or like the BCS national championship multiple times.
Yeah.
The 12-team playoff could finally give him a chance to get into this postseason, something that he has been, so
20
close
years.
to, like, many times. Got a 7th-year quarterback in Alan Bowman, who's played a lot of college football. There's a lot of really old guys in this Big 12. Gary Bohannon, quarterback at BYU. As we said, Cam Rising, 7th-year dude, legend at Utah. Lots of older players, lots of experience, guys that have played college football for a really long time, decided to transfer into the Big 12 because it is wide open and they're going to be able to put up a lot of points.
Yeah.
And so
it's gonna be a fun beer league this year.
yes, that is the Big 12 is the league that me and a bunch of my high school buddies decided to make an online dynasty with. And so, it's been fun kind of watching some of those teams, at least in that online dynasty. But moving on to the Big Ten Conference, whatever, how many teams there's 18 teams in this league. They're going to be playing a lot of football there. No Jim Harbaugh. Oregon, USC, Washington, and UCLA all joined the Big Ten. First of all, which one of these new additions do you think makes the biggest impact in their new conference, just overall?
Oregon, and they win. Getting out of
Okay.
here. Appreciate you coming out and getting some work in, man.
Yeah. Care to elaborate?
I know you're going to kick ass and take names. Ain't too much else to it. Dan Lanning's the best coach in the conference, and there isn't a close second. Ryan Day is not it. Let me say that one more time. Ryan Day's not a good football coach. He's an adequate one. No, I really think they're going to play better defense than almost anybody in the conference. And I know that's a lot to say about the Big Ten. All right, but I mean, Jim Harbaugh is not in Michigan. Yes, every single Michigan starter this season, even if they were a bench warmer last year, got meaningful minutes in every single game last season. That's something that we can't take away from them, something that needs to be acknowledged more in these conversations, that there isn't going to be much of a drop-off there. But it's still Sharon Moore's first year steering the ship the entire season. But the entire season, this is his boat steer. I have the most faith in playing lights-out defense and having enough offensive production to get it done in this conference. Keep in mind, this is a conference where if you score 30 points, you probably win the football game. I don't see Oregon having trouble with that.
Yeah, I'm kind of right on board with you. Ohio State has the benefit of, their schedule is a little bit more difficult than Oregon's, at least on paper heading into the season. Oregon really only has to play Michigan and Ohio State.
Right.
Ohio State has to play.
But that's like saying that one year Alabama only has to play LSU and Auburn.
Yeah, exactly. But, Ohio State does have to play at Penn State. They do have to go on the road to Oregon. Got to go on the road to Michigan State. We don't know what they're going to be yet. Going to get into a grudge match with Iowa and, see if they can put up enough points to win that game.
One of them is going to score negative points.
It's very possible. And Ohio State does get Michigan at home. But I'm going to have to, ride alongside you with this pick. I do have a lot of faith in Oregon. I've got a lot of faith in the guy leading the way in Dylan Gabriel. Has played a lot of college football, has moved up the rankings in terms of the level of program that he's played at. You could probably look at Oklahoma and Oregon as being on a very similar playing field. Oklahoma is more of a traditional blue blood in college football, but the level of program that they are at this moment in time,
but that has meant
Oregon is better.
And being a blue blood has meant exponentially less every year for a decade now.
Yes. But he's a guy that has again played a lot of football.
He really
Um,
has.
you made the point that you think Will Howard's going to have a chance to win the Heisman Trophy. If Dylan Gabriel goes out there, if Oregon wins it, and I mentioned this earlier, he's going to put up very similar numbers, if not more, than what Bo Nix put up last season.
Yeah.
I don't know if they necessarily have the same level of receiving talent on the outside, but they still have a lot. They're going to play this season highly competitively. Their goal is to make the college football playoff, get a first round bye. Their goal, like Ohio State, is not to finally beat Michigan, something that they haven't done in a couple of years. If they can do that, just keep their foot on the gas against a lot of these Big Ten teams, they won't be able to compete offensively. It'll be, like you said, a race to 30. And I think Oregon gets there 95% of the time. There's only like two offenses in this entire conference that has a chance of reaching that total before Oregon does.
I'd imagine you're going to say that that's Ohio State and, don't take it from me, USC.
Yeah.
Don't
Ohio
count
State.
the Terps out.
Hey, I mean, Terps should be interesting.
But the Terps can't play defense, so
Terps have never been able to play defense. That has been their downfall for many years.
It's whatever. It's a lacrosse school.
That is more than fair. But the Big Ten's pretty open. A lot of movement around. I don't know if USC will necessarily translate to the Big Ten as well as Oregon will, just because they don't play the level of defense that Oregon does. We could find USC playing in the super strange Big Ten shootout a couple of times this season.
They will have to go to UCLA once, I'd imagine,
Yeah, and I think they play Oregon as well. But so those will be some fun matchups.
I can get a bold prediction in here about USC.
Yeah, go ahead.
They will average less than 3 scores a game in conference play.
That's okay. I mean, I appreciate the bold prediction.
Conference play.
Yeah. Hey, I mean, getting 21 points under Lincoln Riley?
17.
I mean,
17. They'll average less than 17 a game in conference play.
I mean, that's pretty wild stuff. If it's definitely possible, I think they're going to score more than that, quite frankly. But it's a hot take for a reason.
Yep.
Moss should be interesting. No more Caleb Williams. They still have a lot of receiving talent over there. It should still be I imagine they'll be like an 8-4 football team. Kind of what USC's been the past, 15 years, since making that run and playing against Tulane. Caleb Williams Heisman Trophy season. But yeah, let's move on because there's one more power conference we still have to get into, and it is likely the most competitive of all of these power conferences, just in terms of the number of ranked teams coming into this season. Well, I mean, I could talk about that for like 45 minutes.
The Mountain West?
No, it is not the American. It is not the what remains
the
of the
Big East?
Pac-12. No, it is not. It is not the MAC. It's not
the Southwestern Conference.
It's not the Southern Conference. It is the Southeastern Conference. I mean, the conference that has won the vast majority of national championships in college football over the past 20 years, essentially, since taking the reins from the USCs and Miamis of the world, really winning the vast majority of national championships over the past 50 years, 60
in a multitude of sports.
In the multitude of sports, it is going to be the most competitive conference this season. Enters this college football season with the most preseason ranked teams. A couple of big turnaround things. Obviously, no more Nick Saban. That is we won't know how to feel about this Alabama team until Kalen DeBoer steps on the field. Expectations are still high, though, after leading Washington to a national championship game. But Aiden, is there a shot that Hugh Freeze goes out there and does the impossible and wins Auburn their first conference championship in a number of years? I just have to float that one out there,
I
because
think
there's some people out
that
there that think it's possible.
I think that people will publicly share the length of the hair between their butt cheeks as a social media trend before that happens.
It's more than fair.
All right, that's how strongly I feel about that. I do think that I don't have any idea who wins this conference. That
I
I
have
don't even feel
no clue.
I am the king of pulling it out my butt and making it sound decent. I've got nothing.
Yeah,
I mean, I don't want to pick Georgia because I think Missouri's going to be better than them, but I don't want to pick Missouri because I just don't have the confidence that they're going to put it together for all 12 games. I don't want to pick Alabama because Kalen DeBoer has not sent a crimson red team on the field yet in his coaching career. And I don't want to pick LSU because I'm just not sure that I have any faith in Brian Kelly, even with this newfound expansion of resources compared to what he had at Notre Dame. I don't feel like I want to pick Lane Kiffin and the folks in Oxford because at some point in the season, Lane Kiffin's going to take his eye off the ball and they're going to lose 2 games in 3 weeks. It's going to happen. It's like a prescription. I don't want to take Tennessee because I don't think that Josh Heupel can be a merchant of winning these shootout games against the upper echelon of competition with consistency. And you're going to have to do it more than once if that team wants to win the conference.
well, you know
I
where
don't
that
think
leaves you, Aiden.
Kentucky.
There's only one option. Hook 'em, man.
No, I do actually have if gun to my head, if you're telling me I have to pick a team right now, I hate to say it, yeah, Sarkeesian's burnt orange.
Yeah.
That's gonna be what wins the conference. Oklahoma's not gonna win it. And quite frankly,
A&M under a new head coach is probably not going to win the conference.
no.
But you look at the reason I'm going to pick Texas to win the SEC in their first year, to the dismay of every single SEC fan on the planet, because I think they've got a super favorable schedule.
Yeah.
They obviously you have the road game early in the season against Michigan that doesn't factor into conference standings. I think they go into the Big House and win that game. I think Quinn Ewers has a real shot to be one of the first, be one of the highest quarterback prospects off the board in next year's NFL draft. If if he's going to do that, he's going to have to lead Texas on a war path. They get Oklahoma in the Cotton Bowl for the Red River rivalry. That's going to be a really competitive game. Oklahoma has not been as competitive under Brent Venables as they were with Lincoln Riley. I think Sark has put together a really, really competent team. They've suffered a couple of injuries in this offseason, especially to the running back room, but I don't think that's really going to matter because Sark's going to be slinging the ball around anyways.
It's not like they don't have a depth chart either.
Yeah,
It's not like they haven't gotten to the point where this program is now next man up. They have.
Yeah, they don't have to go to Athens. They get Georgia in Austin, Texas.
Okay.
And then they close out, the rest of their SEC schedule is pretty favorable. Going to Vanderbilt, going to Arkansas, they play Kentucky, they host Florida. And at this point, when they do
I
play
think we've
Florida,
said what needs to be said there.
Billy Napier's already going to be gone.
Yeah.
They close out the
Tim
season.
Tebow will be the interim head coach.
Yeah, they close out the season against an A&M team that has a brand new head coach, and I have pretty high expectations for that team. But I don't think they're going to be a playoff team. That is some renewed rivalry going on right there in that conference, in the SEC. Glad to have that game back, have that game in the SEC.
Yeah.
But overall, I think just looking at this schedule, Texas is going to find themselves in Atlanta, with a real shot to win this their first conference championship in their first year in a new conference. Missouri did it. Missouri made it to Atlanta in their first year with the SEC. I think Texas does it this year, and I think they're able to win that game because Mizzou, when they played in that conference championship game, I could be mistaken, but I'm pretty sure they got matched up against Cam Newton and co.
Auburn? Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, and I don't think Texas is going to have to face a level of player in that conference championship game as good as a Cam Newton. So that's my 2 cents about it.
I'm not sure that anybody has since. Maybe the future
Joe Burrow
grocery,
buzzsaw year.
maybe the future grocery baggers of the will have to when they play Joe Milton on Sunday in the preseason game against the Patriots. But
Yep.
no, I don't think that other than Cam Newton, anybody that's played Cam Newton since Cam Newton. No, I'm with you. It's going to be Texas. And I hate to say that, it pains me. It does not bring joy to my heart to say that on public airwaves, but I think it's true. So with that,
I mean, I'm just looking at this Alabama schedule. I mean, because it's Kalen DeBoer's first year. It's one of the biggest storylines in college football in the SEC. How is he able to translate his winning ways at Washington to a much bigger, better conference? Is Jalen Milroe going to be able to put together a Heisman Trophy worthy season? Don't know. But I mean, this schedule they play at Tennessee, they play against Mizzou, and then they go to LSU. They get a bye game, and then they go to Oklahoma, and then they play
and then they
Auburn.
host Auburn.
They do get Auburn in Bryant-Denny, so benefit of
No
that,
voodoo.
don't have to go to Jordan Hare. Not as much voodoo. I don't expect a comeback this season.
That wasn't voodoo. That wasn't voodoo. That was a damn good football game. Can we admit that now? That was a damn good football game. We came out on the losing end of it.
Except Mark Ingram fumbling the ball 20 yards and the ball rolling down the sideline to go out of the back of the end zone at the end of the first half. That probably would have put the game far enough out of reach.
All right, there was a little bit of voodoo.
I mean, a little bit.
There's a little bit of voodoo.
Yeah, but it's one of those things that whenever Nick Saban was at the helm of this Alabama program, you could always tell when they were going to lose because some weird things started to happen.
Yep.
Whenever, some super funky things start going on. And,
Nick Saban as a child, as like a
tip passes going all over the place, interceptions that, quarterbacks going completely unconscious, playing the best games of their careers. Stuff that you look in the very next week, they're out there and they throw 4 picks and they lose by 4 touchdowns. But they just had the best game of their career against a Nick Saban coach team. I don't know if that will necessarily translate to this Kalen DeBoer team, but curious to see if it does.
My theory on all that, though, is that Nick Saban, when he was a boy, 7, 8 years old, he wandered into the wrong house somewhere up there in Appalachia where he grew up, and he had a curse placed on him. And that curse was that at the times that it was the least convenient, not just to you, but to those you love, inconceivable difficulties will stand in your way. And that is what all these things have been throughout the Saban era, is these moments of complete inconceivableness, inconceivability. Moments of complete inconceivability. There we go.
Yes, just funky things that you could not conjure up in a game of Madden.
Whack shit.
How glitchy that game has been for the past 10 years. The game has to be more broken for Nick Saban to lose. Very few games did the Alabama Crimson Tide go out there and lose because they just got beat outright. It's happened a couple of times,
but not often. And Texas was one of them.
Texas was one of them. Georgia in the national championship. I mean,
no,
what that team was. I mean, yeah, no JMO, no Mechie, but like the teams that they put out on the field those 2 days.
Yes,
Georgia was the better team. Overall, it hasn't really been a lot of other instances like that.
No.
And a lot of those losses during the Nick Saban era Jordan Hare came against Auburn. Really the only team that he kind of struggled against during his career, especially going on the road. But they do get Auburn at
Teams
home this
coached
season.
by Urban Meyer, teams coached by Gus Malzahn, teams coached by Kirby Smart, teams coached by.
Well, I wouldn't even
Wait a
necessarily
minute.
say teams coached by Kirby Smart.
No,
I mean,
not
Kirby
teams
Smart's
coached
got
by
one.
Brian Kelly.
Yeah, no, he's done fairly well against Brian Kelly.
And teams coached by Dabo Swinney.
Yeah, had a couple issues there, but
2
the
and 2.
Dabo train is definitely on the downswing, in my humble opinion. But Aiden, do you have any other things to talk about?
No, I got a group of young lacrosse players out here I got to get back to. So, I think holy shit, we have a show again.
Yes, it's been a couple of weeks.
But just so everyone knows, we are on Restream now. So now you can go to our Facebook page, our Twitter. You can watch it live on YouTube, but we will post the links on those other social platforms, and you can follow it there to our YouTube page, and we'll be live there. Or you can come watch on Restream directly somehow. Haven't figured that out yet, but we're on YouTube.
Yep, very excited to be making the switch.
Yeah. With that, I'm ready for some football.
Are you ready for some football?
I'm ready for some fucking football.
Me too, man. And it's here. Just a couple days away.
Well, with that, we're going to get out of here on that wonderful not disappointment. We're going to get out of here. I want to thank everybody for listening. As always, 6:30 to 7:30 Eastern, 5:30 to 6:30 Central. We do want to hear from you, though. Hey, Coach starts half an hour after our show does. And our show goes an hour, and I don't really want to compete with Kalen DeBoer 30 minutes of your attention because I feel like I want to give him mine. So let us know on our Twitter platform at BTG Sports. Or on Facebook or email behindtheglasssports@gmail.com what you think it's time for us to move the show to on Wednesday nights would be. So yeah, with that.